Hello and welcome to today's yoga journey. I'm Sonia, and today I'm going to address stiffness that we all tend to gather, whether it's because we sat at our desk all day or drove a car all day, or maybe because we were active and went on a beefy hike or a long run or something. Regardless of how active we might be, we just gather those stiff parts. And so in today's yoga flow, we'll do a lot of very standard and probably familiar poses, but rather than dropping into them and holding them and trying to tap into that stillness and that strength, we're going to look for that loose feeling in the body and explore moving around so that we can kind of help the body to feel that freedom of movement and wiggle out those stiff, tight parts essentially. So as always, our breath is going to be a key ingredient to facilitating some of that. So I encourage you to, and invite you to, when you tap into the parts of you that happen to be feeling stiff or tight, to go extra slow in those parts and give those moments some extra breath and attention, and allow this to be a nice nurturing time for you. And at the same time, you will build strength and energize all of your systems. So we will actually go ahead and start in a child's pose. So kind of making your way to your mat or your spot that you've chosen for yourself, and just kind of curling up into a little ball. Your sits bones resting on or towards your heels. Your knees wide enough apart that you feel like your torso has room to relax down towards the floor with plenty of room. Your big toes, however, are touching. And just give yourself a few moments to just reap the benefits of coming into this shape. And then start exploring, even wiggling around in this shape. So it might be tiny little movements, kind of rocking the weight of your hips from right to left. Maybe you're able to roll your forehead from one temple to the other on the floor. And as you do this and you start to get some of those initial little tight spots loosened up, start really coming into that breath. Just kind of in your own comfortable way, but do put the effort into it so that it becomes a little longer or deeper than your average breath. A few more little wiggles like this. And then as we start to bring it towards stillness, let's plant our hands and make our way up to all fours. Planting those hands, lining up those elbows over wrists and hips over knees. And once you feel like you found that, let's do the same here, just exploring movement here. So at first, let's emphasize moving those hips in a circular way, kind of your whole pelvis. And it will move the rest of your body, but just seeing if you can keep your attention on activating the movement from your pelvis. And, again, just go nice and slow so that you can really feel yourself moving all the different body parts, and give yourself a chance to tap into where you tend to be holding the stiffness. And do switch directions nice and smoothly. And every so often, just remind yourself to come back to those nice big breaths. Seeing if you can find that relationship where it's your exhales that are kind of that tool that takes out the tension, the tightness, the stiffness. Bringing that back to stillness and that nice centered, grounded feeling. This time, try and keep the arms and legs still while you just come into that spine and just come into some cat-cow, nice and fluidly undulating that spine to a nice arch, and then a nice rounded shape. about 3 or 4 more like this. And last one. And once you bring it to center, really make sure those hands are planted, those arms are strong so that you can curl your toes and start making your way up into a down dog. Once you feel like you've got your hands and feet in a good position to make you feel stable, just start wiggling around in sort of that, your feet, kind of paddling them, lifting one heel and the other. Let your hips feel free to move and kind of sway around. And then start bringing your attention to your torso, got your shoulders, get some movement. Maybe even your neck, some gentle movements. Get some breath going in there. Just really emphasizing doing what feels good for you, not feeling like this is supposed to look any certain way. Wiggling a couple more breaths in this position, and then bring it to that stillness of your down dog. Give that a couple of nice strengthening breaths. And then let's go ahead and shift the weight of our shoulders over our wrists, building our plank pose. And even in this nice strong pose, let's look for some opportunity for movement. So kind of shifting your hips in one direction and then the other. Rolling on your feet, kind of giving those some opportunity for movement and stretch as well. Let's do one more. And then once you center it out, breathe that strength moment, and then use that strength control to lower yourself towards the floor. Uncurling those toes, looking for nice length in the body, and then start drawing yourself up into a cobra. And then just explore moving here a little bit. Really emphasizing shoulders, maybe sliding one forward, then drawing it back as you slide the other one forward. Get some breath in there. Maybe again, start tuning into a little bit of movement for your neck, and looking over the shoulder that goes behind you. Your elbows are free to move here. Bringing it back to that center place, giving it a nice big breath as you really open up, and then gently float towards the floor. While we're on the floor, let your arms be wherever they're most comfortable. And just emphasize a little bit of movement for those knee joints. And just bending and straightening your legs. Alternating. Trying not to rush. Giving yourself that time to really tune in and feel and breathe. And then allow both to come in. And while they're there, just give your ankles and your feet some opportunity for wiggles. So just be explorative with that. Maybe it's you feel stiffer in your toes than you do your ankles. In that case, just really wiggle those toes and spread them apart. Once you feel good with that, let's go ahead and keep those legs bent. Lift that head, shoulders, and heart off the floor, and then see if there's any room to reach back for those ankles, bringing yourself into a bow pose for a moment. Peeling the thighs off the ground if you can, and then just seeing if there's any freedom of movement here. You may not find that there's very much, but just looking to explore that opportunity for wiggling out the tightness so that we're not adding stiffness to our bodies. We're not stiffening into our yoga postures. Coming back towards center, giving it a nice big breath as you open into your fullest expression of the pose, and then gently making your way out, lengthening those legs, placing the hands under the shoulders, and making our way back up into a downward dog. Again, let's go ahead and wiggle around here for a little moment. And you decide, does it feel better to emphasize just stretching out the legs? Does it feel good to really articulate that movement that's available to you in your back and your spine? Does it feel more like your neck is asking for some attention? Just really tune in to what's going on for you. Give it some breath, whatever is showing up. Bringing that back towards stillness. Again, just really sink into the fullest expression of the pose, stretching everything, breathing some strength and stability, and then walking towards a forward fold. Deciding if your knees feel better, nice and deeply bent, or if your legs feel fine being straight. And once you've found that letting go action of your torso, actually on purpose, kind of bending and moving the legs towards straight, or at least more straight. Just kind of really opening up and stretching and releasing down the backs of those legs. Torso stays in that nice, loose, let go, kind of surrendered position. Really striving to not engage any effort other than the effort to let go. Bringing those legs towards stillness wherever they feel best, and grabbing opposite elbows. And once you feel like you found that, we're going to move that torso. So trying to keep your hips and legs as still as you can, while you just explore moving your torso from right to left. Again, you're looking for that freedom of movement feeling. So really acknowledging those moments where you get to like that feeling of like, oh gosh, it's tight in there. Just give it some love rather than pushing past and making it uncomfortable. Let that pendulum start coming back towards center. Release those elbows, and let's go ahead and roll up. Really stacking those vertebrae one at a time. Really seeing if you can visualize that and feel that until you find yourself in that nice upright position. Once you are there, let's go ahead and bring our attention back to our feet and literally just kind of lift one heel and then the other, and just tune into that freedom of movement in the feet. Kind of tuning into the fact that we have 20 plus joints in the feet, 30 plus muscles in the feet. And you're just trying to get in there and give them all a chance to get a little bit of movement and stretch and wiggle. And the feet are notorious for holding tension. They hold the weight of our whole bodies as we move through our day. Sometimes we shove them into tight shoes, so just kind of wiggling some of that out. You'll notice that your knees get movement too when you do that, so kind of relish in that. And then start bringing it to that place where your feet are going to now be nice and grounded. Legs nice and strong. Let's bring our hands to our hips, and let's just, again, look for that nice circular movement with the pelvis. And again, your whole body is attached to your pelvis, so it's going to find movement throughout the body, but just really focus on initiating the movement, creating the movement from your pelvis. And allow this to feel good. Breathing into it, looking for that smooth, fluid switching of the direction. And then bringing that towards stillness. And now, rather than circular in the hips, literally just taking them from right to left. Noticing how we can tend to feel some tightness in there. And then we can start amping this up a bit by adding our arms. So you're going to continue that swaying motion. And when you go left, you'll pick up your left arm and you'll reach it over, adding a nice side bend. And then you'll go the other way. And we do want this to feel nice and fluid, so kind of find that rhythm that just feels good for you. Only stretch as deeply as feels nourishing and nurturing. Last one. And as you bring it up to center, let's go ahead and bring those arms up parallel to the ground. And we're essentially going to come into twists where we're spinning the arms around with us. And we want them to feel loose. So we are going to hold them up parallel to the ground, but then, we're not looking for them to feel stiff. So just sort of floppily take them around one way, follow them with your eyes, and then the other way. Find breath in there. One more each way. And once you bring it back to center, go ahead and let those arms fall, and let's just come into some nice shoulder movements. So just one arm at a time. It's almost like you're swimming the back crawl or something, except that you're only moving your shoulders. Let your whole body feel fairly loose, although you want to feel firmly planted on the ground. And allow that breath to be one of your number one focuses. And let that come back to stillness. Do a couple rounds where both shoulders go at the same time. And now let's go ahead and come into some squatting action. So this one won't feel as opportunity for loose, but just try to remember to not go to those places that feel like you're adding strain to your body. So we're going to take the arms up, just a nice full body stretch while our legs are still straight, and then sink down into your squat as you reach the arms back. And just let this feel as fluid as possible. Open up as much as you can when you reach up, and then sink down into something that feels powerful but not too strenuous. Maybe think about things like softening your face. And last one. Once you come up to the top and you're reaching overhead, we're actually going to go ahead and interlace our hands, pointing the pointer fingers, much like Charlie's Angels hands. And we're going to come into some nice big circles. So you're drawing the circles with those pointer fingers, almost like they are a pencil or something, and you're standing in front of a big wall that you're drawing on. And for this one, go extra slow, partly because it's going to get into lots of back muscles that we don't want to jerk. We want to just loosen them up nicely, but also if you go too fast, you might get dizzy. So just really nice and slow on this one, giving your body a chance to get into those kinks and release them. Last one in that direction. Pause overhead, just a nice big breath to kind of recalibrate everything, and then go the other way. Last one in that direction, nice big reachy stretch, and then float those hands down. We're going to go ahead and step into a little bit of lunging. So just for the sake of a little bit of balance practice, but also to wiggle out those hips before we sink into a deep lunge, let's stand on one foot, and the foot that's off the ground, just literally play around with moving it in the hip socket. Just, exploring its different opportunities for movement, forwards and back, and right to left, Maybe you emphasize something a bit more circular. And you are, of course, playing with balance in sort of a dynamic, fluid way. And then when you feel like, okay, that's good, go ahead and step that foot back. And we're building for lunge. So when you play with that, you want your heel reaching back. Toes are nice and curled. You're stretching out that foot again. And as you sink down, you don't have to touch the floor with your back knee, although you could, but you want to feel stable as you sink down. Nice deep stretch through the hip flexor. We're going to sink in and out of that a few times. So we're going to bring the arms up when the legs are straight and sink down as our hands come down. 2 more like that. Strengthening moment, deep stretching moments. Last one, we will end in that down position. So even if you weren't bringing your knee all the way down, perhaps now finding a way that you can. And we're just gonna let that deep stretch happen. We're gonna bring our arms overhead, and then we're gonna just look for that feeling of like, I'm not stiff here. So just kind of exploring some subtle little movement. Maybe it's kind of forwards and back. Maybe it's more side to side. And then on this last breath, floating down, hands come either side of that front foot. And from there, we're gonna rock back and forth. So taking your hips back towards that back heel. This front leg moves towards straight, or perhaps it straightens, and you're rocking forwards and back. Looking for that same freedom of movement in those deep hip places. So it could be a tiny movement where you're just kind of rocking forwards and back just ever so slightly. It could be that you're going quite deep forward and quite far back. It's really being where you're at and letting this be your time that's good for your body. Breathing. Awesome. Last one. And coming back to that place where you can ground your hands and use the strength of them to float that foot back towards a brief downward dog. If the wiggles have felt good, maybe wiggle around in it. Maybe just have a strengthening moment where you're holding it. But about 2 or 3 more breaths. Then stepping towards your forward fold, letting go into that. And then rolling up, finding that nice controlled spine action. And once you are upright, let's go ahead and come into the second leg, that balancing place. So again, just exploring range of motion in that leg that's off the ground, playing with balance. Letting your arms feel loose, your torso feel loose, even though of course they're strong and holding you up. And then when you feel ready, stepping that second foot back. Looking for that placement of your feet where you feel like you're able to sink down and feel stable. Arms reach when the legs are straight and sink down as your hands flow down. Find that breath here. Perhaps soften your face. Really look for that duality, especially in these stronger moves, of feeling soft and free in it, rather than feeling like you're so challenged that you're adding a bunch of strain. Last one. And as you sink down, bring those arms up and really let that pelvis just sink towards the floor while you explore your freedom of movement in your torso. No right or wrong way of doing that. Breathing with it. And then floating those hands towards the floor and finding that rocking back and forth movement, however big or small that movement is. Stretching out that front leg, the hip flexor on that back leg. Last one. And as you complete it, again, let's go ahead and build those arms and step that foot back for one last downward dog. Wiggles or not, your choice, whatever feels best. Walking towards one last forward fold. And then from there, starting to sink down into a nice squat. And you decide what kind of footing feels best for you. And once you're there in your squat, again, explore freedom of movement, even in some of the most curled up or challenging positions. So first, just sort of like shifting your weight from one foot to the other, feeling your hips move around, and then draw your attention to your torso and, maybe just kind of make sure that that feels nice and loose. Think about opening up that heart. And then bring the lower body towards stillness. Interlace those hands again, and almost like you're stirring a giant vat of rice. Make some nice, big, circular stirring action with those arms. Again, remember to look for that feeling of this feels good. So however big or small that might be in your body today. Switching it up, going the other way. If you've lost it, perhaps find that breath again, almost like you're stirring it into whatever you've got in front of you that you're stirring. Last one. And come towards sitting on the floor. And once you're there, let's go ahead and come into a few nice little windshield wiper movements for those legs. So let the arms stabilize you behind, but not to the point of anything strenuous. Just a nice support. And then just move those legs. So just kind of rock them from right to left. Get any little tight spots that might be left in those hips. Awesome. One last one. And as you bring it back to center, let's go ahead and roll down towards the floor. Let your back feel nice and relaxed. And then let's come back to a second set of windshield wipers, this time in our new position. Same action that we were just doing though. Maybe your head gets some movement too, so roll your head so that your eyes go the opposite way than your knees do. Your arms are resting on the floor. And last one. As you bring it back to that center place, really ground those feet, perhaps draw them a little closer to your hips, and we're going to come in and out of some bridge. So rolling that pelvis and then your back off the floor and then rolling it back down. Look for this to feel as smooth and fluid as possible. Feel your body opening up, but not taking it to any place of strain. So maybe it's a smaller lift, depending on what kind of tightness you're feeling or what kind of energy level you're feeling. A couple more. And on the last one, go ahead and hold it up in the air. Perhaps bringing your arms under your body if that feels okay. Gives you a little more opportunity to feel stable. And then play with moving your pelvis. We're dipping one hip and then the other. Looking again for that opportunity for movement in our different postures, rather than stiffly holding all the time. Last couple wiggles. Bring it to that centered place. Open up into it as much as you can, kind of your full expression of it, and then roll down nice and slow and controlled. Once your back is resting on the floor again, let's bring those knees in. You're going to grab your knees with your hands, and each leg will go on its own little journey, making some circles in those hip sockets. Let this feel nice and juicy and yummy. So again, however much range of motion is available to you, that's where you want to go. Nurture your body. Maybe remind yourself to slow it down a little if you're tending to rush. Give yourself that chance to really tune in and connect to your body and whatever it feels. And then let's switch the direction of those circles. And as we complete that one, let's go ahead and take those knees as wide as they'll go. Hands go on the inside, and then we're going to strive to grab those feet coming into a happy baby pose. Once you feel like you're there, and maybe you don't reach the feet, maybe you grab the ankles or the shins or your pant legs or something. Coming to that place where you get a nice deep hip opener, and then even here, looking for that freedom of movement. So holding the legs and maintaining that hip stretch, but looking for an action of rocking a little bit from right to left. Double checking your low back is on the floor when you're at center, so that as you roll from right to left, you're rolling across your low back, almost like you're giving it a little massage on the floor. A little bit more of that. And then bring it back to that center place. And let's let both heels drop towards the groin and bring the soles of the feet together. You're holding onto your feet. And now we're going to go ahead and again sort of rocking, except this time forwards and back. So you're kind of massaging your whole spine on the floor now. And maybe you don't roll very much. Maybe you just sort of do a tiny little bit of a movement. Remember, your goal is to help the stiffness out, not add more. So just do what feels good and right for you. And allow that to come towards completion, and let those legs lengthen out. Let the arms do the same, and in that nice full body stretch, find some wiggles on the floor. Just explore what wiggles are available to you. It might be a rocking of the hips, it might be a rocking of the head, it might be focused on your feet or your ankles or your knees. Just sort of move around, almost like you're a worm. And then let all that come towards stillness, and just allow yourself to flop into a relaxed, still place, flopped on the ground, supported by the floor. And just see if you can take a last handful of breaths, just aware of those breaths, witnessing them, maybe even having some sort of intention with them. What is it that we wanted to let go of during this session? And we sort of bring our attention back to that and almost like watch it melt away from us. Practicing relaxing in stillness. Let your face feel relaxed, your hands, your feet, everything in between. Fighting any urge to fidget. Only movement that should be happening is the rising and falling of your breath. See if you can bear witness to that for these few moments while you just relish in the benefits of stillness, but also allow all that movement that you did do, the benefits of that, to integrate. So that you feel rejuvenated and strong and calm, energized, and nice and loose. And you, of course, could stay here for as long as you would like, or if you're choosing to move into what is next, just see if you can allow yourself this last little movement as you transition back towards upright to be just nice and gentle and nurturing for yourself. And I thank you for joining me, and I hope that helped. I'll see you again soon.